7 o'clock, the meeting will come to order. I'm Grace Lesperance, Cascade Township Supervisor. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Supervisor Lesperance.
Here.
Director Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Kessel.
Here.
Trustee Shipley.
Here.
Clerk Slater. Here.
All rise if possible for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion or discussion for approval of tonight's agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Support.
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee Kessel to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have no presentations this evening. So Article 5, public comments. This is the time to comment on anything that is on tonight's agenda. We'll have another public comment period later in the evening after we can finish conducting tonight's business, and that will be the time to comment on anything. Also, with the fire station being such an important topic, after we hear from the presenters and the board has time to ask questions or share their thoughts, we will also have a time for public comments. Another opportunity for people to ask a few questions or make a comment after they hear from our presenters. So if you're able, please come to the podium, state your name and your address for record keeping, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Not about waiting to the end. I'll just get it over with.
Okay.
Scott Rissy, 7238 Cascade Road. I was asked by Chuck Whitley of 5060 Sequoia Drive to read this because he wasn't able to be here this evening. So I'll just try to go through as quick as I can here. Life lessons learned on the Thornable River. It was Friday afternoon, April 29, when the Thornable was at the 2 feet drawdown. At the urging of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, I was walking the Sequoia shoreline looking for stranded clams in need of rescuing. I had walked this shoreline before, but today I found far fewer clams than in previous years. Once I encountered deep water, I returned to the road and walked down the street to a small creek at the end of Sequoia and headed back down to the river. I walked along the sandy water's edge looking for more clams. At the end of a sandbar, I headed toward shore, intending to zigzag along the exposed bottom in search of clams. Everything was progressing normally until I noticed that as the bottom transitioned from sand to a more mucky bottom, my boots started to sink a bit as I walked. A couple of inches of muck was not a big issue, so I trudged on. Big mistake. At some point, I was much closer to the shore than the river, so I decided to make my way to the shore rather than backtracking out of the muck. Unfortunately, as the muck got deeper, my legs got weaker. The muck depth was getting closer to the top of my boots when I finally stopped to rest and take stock of my situation. I had been working my way through the muck for about half an hour, but it was a pleasant day with a temperature in the upper 50s. My feet were dry, I was comfortable, but stuck and had left my phone at home. I was opposite an open lot, but there were houses nearby. All I needed was to get someone's attention. I heard people walking on the road, but they were very far away. Eventually, someone in the closest house came out and saw me, but must have thought I was just walking along the river, and they did not recognize my plight. Despite my pleas for assistance, they returned to their home. Several minutes later, 2 dogs appeared, but the person walking them was unaware of my deteriorating situation. At this time, a neighbor from the next nearest house was taking out their dog. I yelled out that I was stuck and needed help. Here is where I learned life lesson number 1. Having 2 potential rescuers is not necessarily better. Each thought I was talking to the other person, and after a short time retreated back to their homes, and I was still stuck in my boots. They were slowly sinking further. I managed a couple more steps, but the muck only got deeper. It was quite a while later when I heard a car approaching. I waited for the engine to stop and yelled for assistance. Nothing happened.
30 more seconds.
Unable to take more steps, my boots were sinking and the water and mud was slowly breaching on the tops of my boots. Later, I heard some children playing a couple houses down. the river, so I called out again for help. After several more minutes, I saw some of the children accompanied by their mothers approaching from above. After explaining my situation, they located a rope and were able to get it to a tree nearby. This is where I learned life lesson number 2.
Hold on, Mr. Izzy, just to stop you, time's up. Thanks for reading.
I'll,
And this falls as far as tonight, no, go ahead. But under the umbrella topic of why we need to make sure our public safety officers have all the equipment they need.
do you want me to finish it at the end of the meeting?
No, it's go.
Just keep
We're-
going?
We're
Okay.
all following you.
All right, I'll continue. Thank you. A rope only pulls in a single direction, and if that is not where you need to go, then it is not going to help you. Being pulled parallel to the muck surface did not help extract my boots from beneath the muck. It was time to call in the cavalry. The 911 call resulted in the arrival of an entire convoy of rescuers. After assessing the situation, I had been in the muck for a couple hours at this point. One brave soul got a wetsuit or dry suit and entered the mucky mess and made it out the 30 feet or so to where I was stuck. Working a foot and a half under the muck, he worked to slowly cut down the side of my boot without causing serious injury to either his own hands or my leg. But the water and muck mixture still held my foot firmly into the base of the boot. Several attempts were needed before I could position myself to get enough leverage to free one foot. A second rescuer also entered the muck to help free my remaining leg. I was finally free and enjoyed the ride back to the shore, being pulled through the mud on the plastic basket. I was greeted by some of the neighborhood children that offered me a chilled sports drink that tasted wonderful. The kids were great. I was totally covered in mud, and I completed the slow walk up the stairs to the parade of rescue vehicles that had come to our small neighborhood. The most terrifying sight was the fire hose that was positioned to wash me down. I could only imagine the sting of the cold water blasting a thick layer of muck off my soaking clothes. This brings me to life lesson number 3. Firemen know how to adjust the pressure of the water in the hose, and the tanker trucks are parked inside a heated firehouse. The water was warmish and the pressure was not all that excessive. I was a bit wet, but feeling warmer. The required checkout by the ambulance personnel took longer than expected. The warmth of the fire hose faded, and the reality of being totally soaked from head to toe with temperatures in the mid-50s took over. The refreshingly cool drinks had left my mouth chilled. Multiple attempts at taking my temperature had failed as my mouth was just too cold to register properly. In the end, I was allowed to walk a short distance to my house, accompanied by my rescuer and the ambulance attendant. We made it home without incident. It felt good to walk freely, even if it was in water-soaked clothes and no shoes. When I arrived home, I thanked my rescuers and headed inside. This is where I learned life lesson number 4. Appreciate a woman that lets you take off mud-covered clothes in her kitchen. I had not realized the large amount of mud still on my clothes. I am talking large chunks of mud scattered across the floor. One hot shower later, it was all over. Other than extremely sore legs, I was mostly back to normal. This is where I was struck by life lesson number 5. When someone from the government tells you it is a good idea to rescue clams stuck in the mud, even though you have seen perfectly happy stranded clams for the last 25 drawdowns over 10 years that did not need rescuing, don't listen to them. This gets me to life lesson 6. Whenever you are walking on firm ground and first start to sink into a muddy mess, turn around and get out. I think this lesson can be applied to lots of situations, even township boards. If things start going bad and you find yourself doing something you know that you should not be doing, just reverse your footsteps and seek higher ground. Lastly, I would like to thank all the men, women, and children that were part of my rescue. The Cascade Township Emergency Response Team deserves the support of the entire community. They were there for me when I needed them, and they will be there for you when you need them too, regardless of whether they drive out of their existing firehouse or a new firehouse with a flat roof or a sloped roof. It's what's inside the firehouse that matters. Let's not forget that. Chuck Whitley, grateful Cascade Township resident. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Izzy. That will fall under approval of agenda item 1 later on. Anyone else?
I was under the impression there was going to be a public hearing at 6 p.m. And I was here with this wonderfully prepared speech, and I don't want it to go to waste. I can assure you it'll be quite brief. My name is Dave DeBryan. I've been a Cascade Township resident for going on 40 years, hard to believe. And from 1983 until approximately 1996 was a paid on-call firefighter for the Cascade Township Fire Department. I had a lot of experiences during that period of time. And I'd still be doing it if it weren't for the fact that it became more difficult to get up in the middle of the night as the years piled up and to climb over roofs and other very challenging physical activities. However, I've remained a supporter of the department for several decades now, and also have served sort of as an unofficial historian. I also oversee a collection of firefighting equipment for the Grand Rapids Public Museum. So the fire service is truly in my blood and probably will be as long as I'm still breathing. I was active in the Township Fire Department at the time when the transformation of its department from mostly volunteers with only the chief, the inspection officer, and one paid firefighter on duty, and then only until 5 p.m. each day, to a 24/7 professional department with paid on-call backup personnel that we have today. So evening and weekend responses were mostly from home in the old days with an uncertain turnout. So there's little doubt that the service then has little resemblance to the service we all enjoy and appreciate today. It was also a period when the transition began to newer, more efficient and larger response vehicles. Again, I know from experience that backing a fire engine into a firehouse bay was tricky, even with the smaller apparatus that we had then. And I can remember a personal experience of taking off one of the intake pipes, as some of my colleagues often did, even back then, with those much smaller apparatus. I can only imagine what it's like for the guys today with the modern equipment to get them into those narrow bays.
30 more seconds.
That fire station is essentially the same then as it is now. There were very, very few changes that have occurred over that time. So am I done?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. We needed training in hazardous materials and things of that sort, and that was very hard to come by in those days as well. And so the facility, a new facility, is quite badly needed. And I'm here to tell you that with the increased emphasis on emergency medical response, and as an older member of the township, I sleep very well at night, knowing that a very fast and very efficient response is available if at any time I should need it. And so count on me as a hearty supporter for both the new station and to applaud the incredible professionalism and efficiency that I see there today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to participate in the public comment right now, please raise your hand. If you're participating via phone, please dial *9, and we'll wait one moment, Supervisor. No one is raising their hand, Supervisor.
That will conclude this first portion of public comment. Article 6, approval of the consent agenda. Is there discussion or a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee McDonald to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We have no financial actions or unfinished business tonight, which brings us to Article 9, new business. First item 030-2022, and this is the approval to proceed to the next phase of the construction process for Fire Station number 1. Before we begin, I want to thank our residents who have been really active and engaged throughout this whole process. All of the feedback, good and bad, has helped shape the plan that we're presenting tonight. Thank you also to Chief Majors and all the firefighters, Triangle Associates, and also Williams Architect for all the hard work and all the dedication and the constant focus on safety and efficiency for our fire department. We really appreciate it. And I don't think the community will fully understand how much background has gone into it, but the board sure appreciates it. Tonight, we'll hear a presentation from the project team before a board vote to move forward with the project. This vote is the next stage, and it grew out of our 2018 to 2019 facility studies. And during that study, that was when residents identified a new fire department as being the top township priority. So I know it's been a long process, and we appreciate your patience as we've worked together and gotten all the input to create a plan that would best meet our goals now and also going forward into the next decades. The community feedback has been crucial, and tonight is no different. So to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity, any comments, try to limit them to 3 minutes. And following the presentations, we'll hear, and the board can make any questions or statements, but then we'll have another time for public comments or statements before we take the vote. So with that, Chief Majors. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thanks to the board for all your patience and support during the last few years as we get the project through schematic design and now design development. I will bring up Mark Bushhouse from Williams Architects here in a minute to explain that process, followed by Brianne Pitchford from Triangle to explain where we're at with budget and estimates and going forward what's next. I'd just like to say thank you that this is the safest, most efficient, well thought out and planned fire station I've ever seen. We've got 100% support from the roster. If it goes through, this will be something Cascade can be proud of for the next 100 years. And I really do appreciate that. And I really believe in the project and the team. And I'll be able to answer questions after the 2 presentations. And hopefully we'll get this thing going and get some questions answered. I appreciate that. We'll bring up Mark Bushhouse from Williams Architects and kind of walk us through where we're at and where we're going next.
Good evening again, Mark Bushhouse, as he just said, from Williams Architects. Glad to be here this evening. Always love being here. Again, your station and where we are in the process. Just a quick recap. We were brought on board to take some initial thoughts about size and needs from your previous planning study, which was very helpful. And we then reworked or revisited them, some with the experience that we have for our 40+ fire stations that we've done. Worked with Chief Adams and his staff. Again, great work with them. Their team's been wonderful. A lot of discussions about priorities and efficiency and safety as he spoke about. And refined that. And then we did a schematic design phase. And during that, we weighed some ideas on the exterior appearance, as you may remember, and came back and showed a couple ideas. The board gave us direction on which one to go forward with. And we further developed that. And that authorized us to go into design development. So we've spent the last bunch of weeks working with staff, both in the fire department and planning and water and civil engineering, getting all the decisions made. At this point, the goal is we have asked and the fire department has told us all the things they want in the design. Right now, we've got a set of drawings, about 77 sheets of drawing back there. You saw a couple of big notebooks. That's a good start, but we're not done yet. So this is the design of the project developed. They call it design development because we developed the design. The engineers have run their calculations for heating systems, electrical, plumbing. Fixtures have been selected, finishes have been selected, materials have been selected. So now we have all that information, and that was given to Triangle, and they have reworked the numbers, and they'll be up here in a bit to talk about that. But so if with your permission, we would move into the next phase, which is construction documents. During that phase, we develop all the final details and specifications that will allow your departments to give us permits and allow the contractors to know exactly what they have to bid on and what they have to build. Again, the drawings could be up to 200 pages and the books will get thicker yet. It's just how it is. I mean, we talked about what percent solids are in the paint and how many mils thick the paint has to be on the wall. That gives you an example of that's what specifications do. So when contractors don't have to wonder, gee, I wonder what they want. They know exactly what we want. So that's what we do to give you good documents so you get bids that are correct and everybody knows what they're going to have to do to get this building to where it needs to be. As the chief said, this building was designed with an incredible focus on efficiency and safety. Special features are you are now required in the state of Michigan to have a tornado shelter in firefighting facilities that can withstand a tornado category 5. That's the top category, 250 miles an hour. So you have a room in this building that will survive that and allow your firefighters and other emergency response personnel to stay safely in the building during bad weather, knowing they have a place to go so they can stay there ready to serve. Very important. The facility also has a lot of effort made to prevent cancers. Many people don't know, but fighting fires today is far more dangerous than it used to be. Things used to be all cotton, wool, and wood. Now you have all kinds of plastics and other kinds of materials that when they burn, they give off horrific toxic chemicals. That's why they wear masks now, but it also gets all into their turnout gear and clothes. And so the process of getting them well cleaned before they go into the living quarters is very important. Otherwise, they drag all the carcinogens right back into the living quarters and they live in them. And there have been a number of studies done showing that cancer rates among firefighters are much higher than other people. So this was done with great care to give cleaning places, proper air control, not to let air spread. So again, taking good care. Then efficiency, a lot of design effort made to make sure where they eat, where they work, where they sleep is all correctly configured so they can get from where they are quickly onto the trucks and out the door in the best time possible with no tripping hazards, no other changes in direction. So if it's their fourth call that night and maybe they're getting a little groggy, at least the building will help them, not hurt them. So just a few tidbits of things that are done in fire facilities to help your officers and personnel live safely and perform well. So what we're looking for is your permission to move on with this next phase of the construction documents, proceed working in all these details, and get this project out to bid and get under construction this fall. So we're excited with the progress we've made. Again, your teams, both ZBA, engineering, plan review, administration, certainly your fire department staff have just responded every time with every question and thing we needed to talk about. So you've got some great people working for you. So with that, I think that's kind of the highlights of the facility. I could get into the details. It's 17,449 square feet. And that's the size it had to be to do what it needs to do. Not a square foot more. So there we are. Thanks. Questions? Yes.
Question, I understand that the cost estimate has gone up 6% since January.
It has gone up, yeah, yes, and I would say all the projects we're working on everywhere in the country is sadly experiencing much of the same impacts. The first quarter of this year has been, if I knew that, I'd be a very wealthy man. The market says prices look like they're still going up, that things haven't stopped, things haven't really come back. I think there's belief that the prices will level out. Some are thinking, they're hoping they come back down. I'm not quite that optimistic myself. I see too much stuff going on below the surface that are still not really creating an overabundance of materials. So I think we got to move and get this out to bid to get you the best prices possible.
I just want us to be realistic about
Yes,
what to expect.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And of course, there are questions, call me back.
Thank you.
Good evening. So Brianne Pitchford with Triangle Associates. I will just really kind of keep it high level. I'll be going over the numbers tonight, but just really just open it up for you to ask me questions back. We'd already kind of pointed out that we are about 6% over where we were when we presented numbers back in January, which is correct. Part of what Mark had mentioned. So when we did our budget back in January, we were looking at schematic design. So today we're sitting at 77 documents and a pretty hefty stack of papers for specifications. So part of that, what you're seeing in the costs is just a reflection of what's happening in our market. But a lot of it is also just a reflection of understanding better where we're at in the process of design. So when we would have done the schematic budget back in January, we would have been looking at about 15 pages of construction docs compared to 77. So just have a much better understanding of where we are today with the design. There's not really any bogeys that are out there for us. We understand we're not working off narratives anymore. We understand what the mechanical systems are, like the electrical systems, the number of light fixtures, all those types of things have been reflected in our documents. And so we've responded to where the drawings are at today, what the market is telling us. Back when we would have presented our budget in the SD phase, we would have carried what would have been kind of a higher design contingency. We've pulled that back just because we have a better understanding of what's happening. Our pricing also reflects some changes that would have happened at the Cascade Township relative to stormwater retention. So we have reflected some of those changes that would not have been in place back when we did the proposal in January that are now in place today that we need to account for. So those are in there as well. So we're really right now sitting like, again, about 6% more than where we were. But feeling pretty good about where we're at today. Again, as Mark mentioned, we do see things starting to stabilize. Really our best bet now is just to continue to move the project forward, get the construction documents done and get it on the street and the market tell us where we're at today. So.
At what point do you think you're going to lock in these prices?
So our intent would be, given that we get approval tonight to proceed to the construction documents, we would be looking at going out to bid. I think our schedule shows late August, with construction being able to start early September. So that's when we would lock it in. So we would have one more, I'd say we wouldn't do a budget, but we would take the construction documents, put them out for bid, and then that's when we would solicit trade partner feedback and finalize those numbers.
If you had to guess, and it's going to increase, what would you guess percentage wise? Can you?
I really can't. Unfortunately, there's not a good answer for it. 2 months ago, it was one product. The next month, it's another product. As Mark mentioned, we do think that things are finally starting to stabilize. Are they going to come back down? No. But it's very, very challenging. I'll say what we have that's benefit on our side is the fact that we're a light gauge metal truss building as opposed to structural steel. That's a positive for us. We don't have large mechanical units. That's a positive for us. We're using window systems that are not aluminum in some location, most of the locations. That's a positive for us. Not a ton of lumber. That's a positive for us. So there's lots of positives that would say that we're going to really kind of stabilize. But to give you an answer, again, like Mark said, if I knew that, I'd be a wealthy person. Unfortunately, we just can't. We can't narrow those and lock those in. But I guess that's the importance to us is, we feel the building's never going to be cheaper than what it is, today type of thing. So the quicker that we can get to market, the quicker we can lock those things in.
So likely we'll use up the contingency in there built into the budget properly.
For the design contingency, again, we carry that as part of, again, as an evolution of design. Did we account for everything? Do we know everything? We reduced that design contingency, believing that we've got a good handle of where the design is at today.
Okay.
When we go to bid, that design contingency would drop off because again, now we know everything. All of those dollars would be, essentially what we would believe would be absorbed into what we consider the cost of work. So our trade partners, construction contingency would continue. Again, that's something that's managed between the township and ourselves for those unforeseen conditions. We make assumptions for what the soil conditions are, how much we have to haul off site, how much we have to haul on. And those are some of those reasons why we would keep construction contingency.
Thank you.
I just want to make a point that we talked about in our working team as well, is that we'll still continue to work on hopefully value engineering some of these things too. Not where it would diminish the quality of the building, but for example, right now there's one kind of window spec'd, and the company that has the windows has offered that there might be a cheaper alternative, not to affect the quality of the fire department. So this whole process will continue to find ways to drive that. We're not telling the board, hey, this is what we're spending now and just move on like it's good. We're going to continue to find those ways that we can hopefully bring down some of those costs. And we had already worked on identifying a couple of those, including landscaping as well. So just wanted to point that out.
The cynical part of me thinks this is too smooth right now, but we appreciate it. This is good news.
I don't know that we say it's smooth to get here, right? Thank you.
Maybe we were due for this. Any questions, comments from the board before we open it up to the public?
My only comment is, we have seen from the beginning of this project, costs increasing, and any delays are just gonna be that much more in costs. Let's kick this can down the road and get it moving. That's all I have.
I think the good thing is we planned for this quite a few years ago. And we have the money, we'll have to bond, but it won't raise anybody's taxes a dime. And I think I haven't looked at it again with the increased cost, but before, with the bonds being priced the way we got a indication a couple meetings ago, it appears that our revenue sharing will still cover the debt service. And so it doesn't make sense to me at this point for it being the number one priority of all the citizens in the township that we cheapen anything. And I agree with John that we can't delay anymore. We have to go with the approval. And if Adam is satisfied and all the firefighters like this plan and the design, the architect has spent so much time going over it. And he said it's one of the finest plans that he seen. I think that's your comment. And it's safe and it provides everything the township needs. I fully support going forward with it.
I think, Mark, you've done a wonderful job putting together a fire station in Triangle. I have all the faith in the world in you guys doing this right. I am really with Jim. I'm not interested in saving $5,000 on windows if I gotta spend 60,000 15 years from now replacing them. So I want the quality to be there. It's a 100-year building. I want all the components to last 100 years. So great job. Thank you.
Just want to say, it's been 4 years. Let's go.
Well, I've only been, yeah.
Right? Since we all have been talking about it. It's been 4 years. Let's go.
Public comments. In person or virtually? Or questions?
Ralph Moxley, 1757 Hillsborough. I'm an old retired architect. And over the years, I've probably done 25 to 30 schools with Triangle Associates. And I've had nothing but good results in those projects. Not only in terms of the planning aspects and the input from them on good value, what makes the most sense, but also in terms of good pricing, putting together the estimates for us. I never had a surprise that was unexpected at all from those folks. And finally, in construction, they always did a great job, supervising the work, making sure it was done according to plans. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
If any of our Zoom participants, including our panelists from Triangle Associates and Williams Architects, would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you are participating via phone, please dial *9. Doesn't look like anyone is participating on the Zoom.
Okay.
Supervisor.
Is there a discussion? Oh, Manager Swayze.
So we did promise that we would give the board an update on our ZBA case from last night as well. So just an interesting caveat, the way that our ordinance is written, essential public services go in front of the ZBA for either variances or site plan review, which is a deviation from a normal development, which would have to go to the ZBA for variances and the planning commission for site plan review. But that's the way it's written. That's the way we did fire station number 2. We did consult with our legal counsel to make sure that's the appropriate way. And that's what they recommended as well. So we went to the ZBA last night. Our site plan was approved. Did want to make sure everybody knows that there are 2 specific variances that we asked for and received. The first one is on the height. So the host tower is 47 feet. And I believe the height regulation is 34, 35 feet. And then typically we'd be required to complete an entire sidewalk across the entire property. Because there is not a continuation sidewalk in the south side of the property. And that there's an issue with people walking across emergency access. They allowed us to just do the sidewalk to our front door, but we committed that if ever the property to the south is developed, we would complete that sidewalk. All I got.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to proceed to the next step in this. And like I said earlier, get it going down the road.
Support.
The motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee McDonald, to approve proceeding to the next step. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone, for all your time and commitment. Item 032, 2022, hiring of a township engineer. Manager Swayze?
We missed one.
Missed one.
Oh, item 031, 2022. Thank you. Formation of a pathway advisory committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So at a board meeting in April, we had a discussion about the potential establishment of a pathway committee, which would provide advisory information and recommendations to the township board, similar to the current function of the Parks Committee, which was established by the township in the late 70s. The purpose of the committee would be to provide research and recommendations to the township board regarding all aspects of the pathway system, including funding, regulations, maintenance, and potential expansion. So if the committee is established by the township board, the next step would be for the committee to be seated potentially in late May or June. The committee would be first charged with establishing bylaws, most likely modeled after the Parks Committee bylaws, which would be eventually duly adopted by the Pathway Committee and the Township Board. So I included in your packet a potential resolution to establish the Pathway Committee. That resolution establishing the committee was drafted similarly to other committees that have been established by the Township Board in the past. And if the resolution is approved, it will set forth the following terms. The committee will be established for the purpose of advising the Township Board regarding various aspects of the Cascade Charter Pathway System. It will be recommendatory and advisory only, responsible to comply with all aspects of the Open Meetings Act. The committee will be comprised of 1 Township Board member, 1 Planning Commission member, 1 Parks Committee member, and 4 residents at large. The Township Manager or his or her designee will serve as an ex officio member of the committee. The committee members will be appointed by the Township Supervisor and approved by the Township Board for 3-year terms and can be removed by the Township Board after a hearing for cause. And the committee would meet at an interval in time and place to be determined. So if the board establishes the committee, it'll become effective the day after enactment, though the committee members will still have to be seated. Really not any direct cost to establishing the Pathway Committee, and any recommendations that involve financial considerations would be considered for approval by the Township Board at the time the recommendations are made.
I've got a comment. we repeatedly and continuously hear how important our pathways are. Our pathways are aging. I think that we need a committee to vet out the recommendations and bring them before the board like all of our committees do. They do a fine job of that, and I really, as far as I'm concerned, a board member, appreciate the work that they do. And I think that, Ms. Supervisor, that you ought to be looking at appointing people that use the pathways. As an example, we got some people that live way out Cascade Road, they're called tailors. They continually harass me with recommendations. Notice I'm saying smile as I say that. With recommendations, because they like the pathways, they use the pathways, they talk to their neighbors, and that's the type of people that we want on the committee. That's all I have to say.
My plan was to put K Taylor and then let those two fight it out. And then we know the other one will come anyway. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1, which benefits all of us.
And there are other people too that use other sections of the pathway over on Buttrick and whatnot, so.
It was a resident comment that gave us the idea to just extend the pathway rather than do that median on Cascade.
Yeah. I just have a question on the resolution itself. Number 4, I was confused. The committee shall be comprised of 3 (7) members.
That is a typo. I apologize. It'll be 7 members.
Okay,
I'll make sure the correction gets made before the resolution is signed.
okay.
Will this fall under the board committee policies?
It would not, because it's not being recommended as an ad hoc committee. It's being recommended as a permanent committee. So they'll be responsible for developing bylaws and submitting to them to you guys for approval.
Make a motion that we approve the Pathways Committee.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee Shipley to approve the formation of a pathway advisory committee. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee McDonald.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook.
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce.
Yes.
Trustee Kessel.
Yes,
Trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. Motion carried. Item 032, 2022, hiring of a township engineer. Manager Swayze?
Great, thank you. So in early 2022, the board approved an organizational realignment plan that created a new position, which was titled the Director of Public Works. The position was advertised in February, March of 2022, and interviews were conducted in March and April 2022. We interviewed 7 candidates, which are all the candidates that applied, and ultimately selected the final candidate. Despite making a very strong offer to the candidate did not accept the position. And right now, there is not another candidate that the township feels comfortable making an offer to. So out of the candidates that were interviewed, and the interview team consisted of myself, HR Director Katie Morawski, Supervisor Lesbrunz, Wendy Corstage, who represent both the Parks Committee and the Planning Commission, and Buildings and Grounds Supervisor Jim McDonald. Between the 5 of us, it was clear that the strongest candidates came from a strong engineering background. So before the position is re-advertised, we're recommending that the position be retitled to Township Engineer. Attached in the packet is a reworked job description. You'll note that it does retain a majority of the duties previously assigned to the position, but also reflects a more engineering-oriented position. So in addition, it's recommended that the position be moved to a pay grade 9 to reflect the tight labor market for the skill set we're seeking. We've talked to a couple people in the industry, and they've all said that whether you're public or private, it's a really hard time to hire a civil engineer right now. So we think that bump in pay grade will give us a little bit more ammo to get in high quality candidates. So as I mentioned, I included both the marked up and the clean job description for the engineer position. So if it's approved by the township board, we're anticipating advertising the position immediately with interviews in early June and onboarding in late June or early July. So given the position was budgeted for a full year in the fiscal year 2022 budget, we really won't need an amendment to reflect the updated salary range, as there'll be plenty of money in that line item. But depending on the salary that is assigned, an increase for the position may be needed when the 2003 budget is prepared. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Timmy, I know you and John and some others have repeatedly talked about engineer being a key component to this position. With it reworked, do we feel that now with a new job description that we'll have less reliance on our outside engineer?
I think whether it was reworked or not, we were going to have less reliance on our outside engineer, but focusing the attraction on a candidate with a clear, strong engineering background has a potential for even more or even less reliance on an outside engineer.
Okay, thank you.
I like that, Jim. I think that that's the way to go. And I think that it also will give us, when we need engineering consultant, it'll give you a quicker response than having to reach outside of the township and grab one. And a raise in their salary to reflect that, I think that's perfectly normal. If that's what you have to do, that to get quality people, then you do it. And I'm in favor of supporting what Ben's asking for.
Manager Swayze, the part about the education.
Yep. So, of course, we're continuing reviewing and talking to people in the industry about this. It turns out that master's degrees for civil engineers aren't all that common. And the ones that do have it are probably way out of our price range. So my plan is to take off the preferred master's degree as part of the requirement of the position. Now, if somebody applies that has a master's degree, that would be outstanding. But what we're trying to do is not discourage people from applying, thinking that, oh, I got to have a master's degree to have this.
Makes sense.
Great. Is there a discussion, further discussion or a motion?
I make a motion to go forward with this and with all post haste, and go do your thing, Ben, and find us a good candidate.
I support.
So motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Kessel, to approve the hiring of a township engineer based on the proposed job description. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 10, discussion. Manager Swayze, can we get a quick update on the two possible thorns in the township side?
Yes, definitely. So we continue to have conversations with our township attorney about the Egypt Creek landscaping zoning problem. And we've actually had an opportunity to speak to our attorney has a chance to speak to an attorney that's representing some of the neighbors as well. So I did get a phone call from Mr. Homier about 2 hours ago, give me an update. Really the idea is to put kind of all of the issues that we have identified into the initial communication to them in order to put them on notice and then follow up from there. So he thought he was going to be able to get that letter out by the end of this week. We've made commitments to neighbors and other people to make sure that they have a copy of that letter as well. And we are fully committed to getting that issue resolved. The worm farm, the composting zoning issue, the planning commission did appoint that committee. The committee has met 2 times now, 2 times. We have a couple members here, actually, if you have questions for them, so they should be able to answer that too. But the update that Planning Director Hilbrands gave me yesterday was that we're anticipating a new zoning ordinance regulation for that type of issue to be considered by the Planning Commission sometime in June. And of course, all zoning ordinances are a recommendation by the Planning Commission that come from the Township Board. So eventually that committee will be here in front of you guys to make that recommendation as well. So, but I understand everybody is, being patient and, understand that there's a process to go through, both the neighbors that have complained and the person that's using the property. So everybody seems to be on the same page with that timeline right now. Also figured I'd give an update on the Round Hill Subcommittee. So we they met for the 4th time today. We've got another series of meetings all the way up through the end of June, which they'll come and give a presentation on the recommendations. Ralph Moxley is chairing that. He's doing an excellent job. Myself and Planning Director Brian Hilbrands have been in there. We got a whole host of duties that we've got to do in the next 2 weeks to kind of push that narrative along. But I think it's a great working group. Everybody's had great recommendations. And I think that there's a silver lining in that whole issue is that we'll have a stronger planning department coming out of it. So look for a report from that committee coming to the board at the end of June as well.
Boy, the planning commission has really done heavy lifting. We sure appreciate it. We think this township engineer will really give you the support, more skills that you need. So just hang on a little bit longer, keep doing a great job.
Ben, did he stop using it as a worm farm?
So he has been told he can't bring anything else onto the site at the time. So he actually has living organisms there right now. So basically the cease and desist was you can't do anything else. You can't bring in any more materials and wait for the planning commission to decide what the regulation is before you decide what you want to do after that.
Okay.
We bring something else up under discussion here also?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, we've been talking, DDA mostly, about wanting to have a farmer's market in Cascade. What greater place than that big square chunk of grass that we have immediately to the west of the drive going into the library? If you wanted to, if the township and the residents wanted to, we could develop that, put up some type of a nice shelter so that it would be sheltered during climate weather. It could double not only as a farmer's market, but also for art displays. It could double for use by the library. And I think it's a wonderful chunk of property that could serve several purposes. And perhaps DDA might want to look at that and incorporate that into some of the recommendations back to the board.
That location makes more sense than the Tuffy building on the corner.
Well, it's got the parking, it's got the library parking. If you wanted to include restrooms there, you certainly could. It's got water that's available. And I just think it makes a wonderful multi-purpose area that can be an open air, but still have shelter. And it has lots of parking available for those events.
You're talking about down there or over there?
Over there. As you're heading towards Station 1.
Gotcha.
Okay, it's where we set up some of the items for 4th of July.
Right.
Which it can also be used during 4th of July for those food booths, the churches, you know? Yeah, it's perfect. So I think, Ms. Supervisor, that's something that perhaps you and Mr. Swayze want to bring up to DDA and tell them to vet it out with recommendations back to the board. It would be a plus for the community. It would sure save them a lot of driving time going all the way to Ada to use their farmer's market, by golly.
You know, I've heard that with the same vendors make the rotation, and it might be an issue with getting a day of the week where they're available, not,
Well, that's down the road.
or we could just woo them over.
Last
from
time I
Ada.
checked, there are 7 days in a week, 5 in the working day.
Point.
That's
Ben,
all I
could you,
have.
thank you. Ben, could you put that on the items for DDA?
Yep.
Thank you. Article 11, public comments. Anything, whether it's on the agenda or not.
I'm Dorothy Cribbs, and I live at 1980 Deerfield Court in Abbeydale Estates. And I am concerned about a development that was started and stopped. It's called the Meadows of Forest Hills. And they got approval and they took everything off of the land. And there were drainage issues when it would storm. And the water would back up behind the houses on Spalding Road. It's off of Spalding Road between Cascade and Burton. And so when we would get a lot of rain, all of the storm water would gather behind these houses on Spalding Road. Now that's all that I noticed. But recently I was back in Tall Pines, and there are a couple of people that back up against it there. And this was the first time I'd driven back there and been to this person's house. And there are these retention areas. There's just all this denuded land of dirt. There's these sand hills. And I went, oh my God, you have an awful, I mean, this is what they get to look at behind their house. And she said that when it rains and all the retention ponds are, I mean, it backs all up there. this development really needs to be reassessed before any further development is done on it. It is set there, they left it, they took everything off the land, they did all sorts of earth moving, and then they never built anything on it. There is a sign there, there's a label on it that says coming March of 2022, this is May. And when you call that number, they direct you to another property that they're developing. But I think that the plan as they did it shouldn't have been approved because it seems like all of the stormwater is going places it shouldn't. The people whose house I went to visit, he is actually a developer, and I just talked to his wife, but she said that when he saw what they were doing, he was like, they're doing this all incorrectly. The retention areas he felt should have been on the other side of the
30
development.
seconds.
So I have pictures here. Oh, there's also a tank that is the street Abbeydale Drive where it dead ends. There is this large green tank. I had the fire chief look at it. He said he thought that it was a diesel fuel tank. And it's just been sitting there for years now in this undeveloped area. So I just think that this needs to be looked at and addressed. And it shouldn't be approved until they rework their plan. So thank you. And
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cribbs. We'll review it and we'll get back to you and also keep you informed.
Hi there, good evening. Alan Bolter, 2097 Steckity Woods. Just wanted to come publicly introduce myself as a candidate for the 21st Kent County Commission District. As you probably are aware, with redistricting this year, the Kent County Board of Commissioners has gone from 19 up to 21 for the upcoming election. Cascade Township has traditionally been all within one county district, has now been divided into two. So the 21st district would include 7 of the 10 precincts here in Cascade Township. So basically everything west of the river, as well as all of Caledonia and all of Bowen Township. I'm a lifelong Kent County resident. My wife, Mandy, and I, and our 2 boys live here in Cascade. For the past several years, I've coached football for the Forest Hills Youth Football League. If it's not obvious, your current county commissioner is not running for re-election. She happens to be my wife. Mandy was actually offered a new job opportunity late last year, and it did not afford her the ability to run again for re-election. So she's not going to be seeking another term as Kent County Commissioner. Public service is something that I've always had a passion for. Fortunately now with my professional life as well as personal life, things that have lined up where I do have the ability to serve on the county board if elected. Currently, I work in the mental health field where I do all the public policy work for the public mental health system. Prior to that, for several years, I worked in the Michigan legislature, worked for Dick Postumus, former state representative Jerry Coyman, and then former state senator Bill Hardeman, who did represent Cascade Township. If elected to the board, some of my priorities would be public safety, making sure that our neighborhoods are adequately covered and they're safe. I would personally oppose any additional government mandates, ask that at the county level, that the county has greater transparency when communicating with its residents. Want to make sure that the county remains good stewards of our tax dollars. Would only support balanced budgets and really try to keep taxes as low as possible. And then finally, I would fight for local control and local decision-making, something I'm personally, feel very strongly about. I would, if on the board, want to partner with this board, work on things that are important to Cascade Township and the other townships, things I know here in this area, broadband being one of them, for an example. And then finally, it would just, I would like to be your advocate at the county level. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. Happy to, have further discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you. there anyone virtually?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to participate in this public comment section, please raise your hand. If you're using your phone, please dial *9, and I'll wait a few moments, Supervisor. No one is raising their hand.
Article 12, manager comments?
Just a couple items, thank you. So a couple ongoing projects I just wanted to give the board an update on. First off, our gypsy moth spraying. So we all know what a wacky spring that we had with temperatures and the ecological conditions for the spongy moths are about 3 weeks late right now. So while we initially usually tell people to expect the spraying to take some time between the first weekend in May and the first weekend in June, it looks like it's going to be very close to that first week in June, if not a little bit past that. So put an update on the website today, and all those letters have been sent out to the residents in the spray areas. Myself and Supervisor Lesperance are meeting with the Road Commission tomorrow to finalize the additional patrols. And we will be giving you guys monthly updates on those patrols and how effective they are. So we're excited about that. And in a little bit of bad news, while we are able to get a contractor for the Berger Goodwood project, right now the acquisition time for ductile water main is 20 to 26 weeks. So while we are initially anticipating that that project would be getting shovels in the ground in May or early June, it looks like it's going to be an early September start for that project right now. So
That's the PFAS
yeah.
remediation.
So we'll be providing a newsletter update to all of those residents on that. I will say we are lucky that we had anybody bid on our project at all. I was talking to the deputy administrator in Kentwood. So they actually so they saw the water main issue coming, right? Maybe a little bit smarter. They pre-purchased water main, but the joke was on them. Nobody actually bid on their project. So we might actually, our contractor might buy their water main for us to be able to start a little bit earlier.
Perfect.
So those are all the updates that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Board comments.
I got one. I always stand up and thank you guys for being here. A lot of familiar faces, a few new faces, that's good. Old faces, bring your neighbors, new faces, bring your neighbors to the next meeting. I think that the board did some good work here for the residents tonight. And without any additional expenses to the residents. So thanks for your support, everyone.
Thanks, fire department, for making us look good. In the back corner.
I appreciate the opportunity to be gone the last meeting. I was in sunny Florida, but I watched the meeting every minute from the beginning to the end. But it was much warmer there than here. But it's the first vacation I took in 2 years. So thanks for letting me be gone.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
The motion by trustee McDonald, supported by treasurer Pierce to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion still carries. Thank you
You
so
can
much.
stay, John.